course, the crowd wants Reid to go for it. Wouldn't be surprised if he did on 4th down and 1.
So, anyways, with that, time yours.
Welcome to 4th and 1. I'm Tod Palmer, joined by Nick Jacobs, and I promise you this will be the last game day preview podcast we have this season, Nick Jacobs, because there are no more games after this one. It's the Super Bowl. It's the Chiefs. It's the Eagles. And this is a lot like, I mean, I got to be honest, this is a lot like the Cincinnati game. Normally, I have a really good feel like, I think I know who the Chiefs are. I think I know how the game's going to go. I think I know, this team's strength versus this team's weaknesses, whatever. I honestly, like the Bengals game, I felt like was a coin flip. I didn't really feel like I had a good feel for that one. And I'm kind of in that territory again. How do you see this game? I mean, do you expect this to be a close one, or do you see one team or the other having a decided advantage?
I think it's going to come down to a couple of key factors we'll end up getting into throughout this podcast. I think those are going to decide either how close it's going to be or if it's going to be a blowout. And there's three focal points that I kind of have that we'll get into here in a little bit. And I think those are going to be the determination of like, hey, 2 out of 3 happen here, this happens there, and it goes a couple different ways. So I think that to give a little tease to it, Eagles defensive line's one of them. The Eagles read options, another big part of it. And then the final part of it's going to be Jalen Hurts' shoulder and how that is able to do versus Mahomes' ankle and how that does. So I think those are kind of the 3 key points that are going to determine if this is close, if it's a blowout either way. Because if you look at historical history, or if you look at historical, and it was redundant. If you look at history, I was meant to say historical stats.
From a historical nature.
Yeah, we all have our struggles, man. But no, like if you look at the history, like a number 1 offense versus a number 1 defense, the number 1 defense blows out the number 1 offense. And Eagles had the number 1 defense, Chiefs had the number 1 offense. So, I mean, history says that they're going to do it, that the Eagles should blow them out based on previous Super Bowls. But then when you go look through the Eagles' schedule and you look through this and that, the quarterbacks they faced, and you're like, well, they're not like the Seattle Seahawks that did it last time, or the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going against the Raiders, if I remember correctly. I think that was the other time. But it's that there's, I don't know, it'll be intriguing. I mean, I again still don't want to bet against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo when the games matter.
Yeah, we'll certainly get into that. But yeah, I would say the Mahomes factor plays in there. I want to ask though.
You can ask. I don't know if I'll answer it. No,
I feel like there's a couple storylines that have been a little bit underplayed this week. Like Donna Kelce's been everywhere, God love her. And there's been a lot of talk about the brothers matchup between Travis Kelce, who is a Chiefs tight end, and I don't know if you're aware, but his older brother, Jason Kelce, actually plays center for the Eagles, Nick.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's brought this up yet, but it's true. There will be brothers on opposite sidelines for this game. I feel like, more people should be talking about this. And of course I kid, because that's about all that anybody has talked about. I wonder in your mind though, because I know how much reverence you have for Andy Reid. Do you consider this the Reid Bowl or the Kelce Bowl? Because obviously this is Andy Reid going against an Eagles franchise that he resurrected. That team had bottomed out in the first few years under Jeff Lurie, and Andy Reid breathed life back into Philadelphia Eagles football. Could not quite get them over the hump, and ultimately, he was let go. And look, to the Chiefs' benefit, Clark Hunt wisely stepped in and said, "Oh, we'll take Andy Reid," and it's worked out in the last decade here in Kansas City. But I still think that it's going to be whether Andy will say it publicly or not. And obviously, he's not the kind of guy who likes to put gasoline on a fire, and he doesn't like it when his players do it either. But I gotta feel like that there's a fire burning inside him that he doesn't want to lose to anybody in a position like this, but he sure as heck does not want to lose to Philadelphia in this position, man. So in your mind, is this the Reid Bowl or the Kelce Bowl?
I think there's layers to it. I mean, the Kelce brothers are going to be a fun historical fact for the rest of the time.
So it's the Onion Bowl.
They're going to be whatever you need, whatever feels right in your heart, man. Go with it. The Kelce brothers is always going to be a fun historical fact for Super Bowl or for Trivial Pursuit night or whatever people do these days at trivia night at the bar or whatever it may end up being.
Game night at the Palmer household.
Yes. I haven't been to one of those because there's no cracked chicken chili there. So
you're welcome. I'll let you know next time.
Well, there better be cracked chicken chili there. I'm sorry, sir.
My wife will meet your demands.
We'll see. Okay. It's just, I think she's admitted multiple times she can't remember how she made it. So this has been hyped up in my head for years. I don't even care if it's 90 degrees outside. If there's cracked chicken chili there, right. I'll make do. But no, so that's part of it. Then the Andy Reid aspect of it, like you said, he's gonna do a fantastic job, not trying to play it up or show what it really probably means to him. And there's a lot of guys on the staff as well that came with him from Philly, and they know as well what it means to him, whether Eric Bieniemy from his time there, Matt Nagy from his time there, Steve Spagnuolo from his time there, Tom Melvin, the tight ends coach, Greg Lewis, who was a player. And I could go on and on with the list, like Rick Burkholder and Barry Rubin, the strength coach.
Oh, and don't forget the front office. You got Brett Veach and guys like that. So
right. And like I said, I could go on and on. I was just trying not to keep going with the list, but then I was going to get to the whole thing here pretty soon anyways.
I think Mark Donovan from the president even came from the Eagles.
Yes, he came from the Eagles, came to Kansas City, and then he was he doesn't get enough credit for helping with the Andy Reid thing like he should. But all that combined, that's another layer to it. And I think they know what Andy went through in Philadelphia, understands the criticism that he got, a lot of the arrows he took over the years. And in some ways, in all honesty, this is a big reason I'm hoping for it. And this is where the third layer comes in to it for me. And this is where the real core principle of it is, in my opinion, is this is Andy proving to Philadelphia once and for all how good of a coach he is and how much they should have appreciated him when they had the opportunity and to do so. For him to take him to that many conference championships, to do that type of stuff, he didn't have a Patrick Mahomes type of quarterback. And he has Patrick Mahomes now. So I think there's some plays that, hey, if Andy's got them stored away, some of those sneaky plays, like this is it, man. This is your chance. And the other part of it is, this is a big legacy game for Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Because if they win this one, that's 3 Super Bowl appearances, 2 Super Bowl wins in 3 years, 5 AFC conference championships, 3 of them that they won. You can't touch them anymore. Will there be arguments media-wise that, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow's better this, Joe Burrow's better that? They're just doing it to fill time. From that day forward, if they win the Super Bowl on Sunday, people have to actually shut their mouths about what greatness is with those 2 guys. And if they aren't Hall of Famers, that helps Chris Jones with his legacy. That helps Travis Kelce with his legacy. That helps punch a lot of tickets potentially to the Hall of Fame. So that's what's on the line this Sunday, not just winning a Super Bowl, but punching some legacy tickets from here till each one of those individuals kind of parts ways. And for Steve Spagnuolo, how huge would that be for Steve Spagnuolo? It'd be his 4th Super Bowl win as a defensive coordinator. Like, Bill Belichick had a couple with the Giants. Spagnuolo had a couple with the Giants. And then he would have 2 with the Chiefs, 2 different franchises, 4 titles as a defensive coordinator. And then so that, for him, that's huge. So, I mean, there's just, like I said, there's so much to it. But, like, this is the one that kind of just locks it in for Andy Reid once and for all, where he's at in the Mount Rushmore of NFL head coaches. Because I got a full screen that I'm going to end up putting up. Since true NFL free agency began in 1993, Andy's going to end up being, potentially, if he wins, he will be the 4th coach during that era to actually win multiple Super Bowls. Right. That's how hard it is in the free agency era. And if Andy Reid's able to do that in the span that he does, him and Bill Belichick are in some very rare air at that point.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, Belichick is in his own category at this point after what he did with Tom Brady. But that second championship,
keyword with Tom Brady,
right? But that second championship really separates quarterbacks. It separates coaches.
right?
It was important for Andy to get to get that Super Bowl title as a head coach on his ledger, so that he, could cement his Hall of Fame status a few years ago. He's going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame one day. Like you said, the question will be like, how high up that list does he push? I mean, he's got the career longevity records and things like that. He's got the respect of his peers. He's got the coaching tree. You think about Doug Peterson, got Philadelphia their title. You talk about Spagnuolo and other guys who, John Harbaugh, guys like that who've gone on to win Super Bowls after, learning under Andy Reid, things like that. All that, only gets enhanced. But I also think that this is when you think about what the Chiefs offseason looked like, making the decision to move away from Tyreek Hill and kind of pivot. And you really got to see what the front office strategy and game plan was as they move into the meat of this, Patrick Mahomes contract. Like, how are they going to navigate this time going forward, right? And they didn't move a bunch of money around. They ate Patrick's 40 million, 50 million, whatever it was this year. Kept it on the books, and they've still proven that they can surround him with enough talent to go out and be in a position to win championships. I think it speaks volumes to the player development of this coaching staff, to the player and talent identification of this front office. But more than anything, I think it speaks to the brilliance of Patrick LeVon Mahomes II, because I think that he is a generational quarterback. He is a unicorn. And like you said, there will be no denying it. I mean, what he's done in his first 5 years as a starter, if he wins this Super Bowl, will essentially be unmatched. And I don't know that you're going to see anything. I mean, already in his 5 years as a starter, the absolute worst season he's ever had came down to losing to Tom Brady and the Patriots dynasty in overtime because Dee Ford lined up offsides. Or maybe, last year when they blew the 21-3 lead and lost in overtime. But either way, that's the floor that he has set for himself as a starter, which is just absolutely insane. And if he wins a second title, I mean, he'll have already matched Peyton Manning, and guys like that. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger, other Hall of Fame quarterbacks. I mean, if he wins, you could make an argument that Patrick Mahomes is a Hall of Fame quarterback February, after 6 seasons in the NFL, which is not an easy task.
And then my other question for you off that, and for people listening right now, is of the active quarterbacks in the league right now, how many of them have multiple Lombardis?
I don't think any do now that Tom Brady's gone.
Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm pretty sure Brady is the last of that era. So like Mahomes kind of, I think, sets the new bar at that point in terms of quarterbacks that have won multiple Super Bowls.
Yeah.
Like he becomes the new bar.
Yeah. And I mean, you look at everybody wants there to be like this rivalry with him and Justin Herbert. Herbert hasn't even won a playoff game in 3 years as a starter. He's only taken to the playoffs once in 3 years as a starter. And obviously, look, there's other factors at play there, but what Patrick Mahomes done is incredible. And I don't want the significance of this moment to be lost for another reason. The fact that he and Jalen Hurts are marked the first time that you've got two black starting quarterbacks opposing each other in a Super Bowl is a watershed moment for the NFL. When you think about what guys like Warren Moon went through in late 70s, early 80s, and what just the black quarterback in general has gone through in this league, to be in a position where I don't think that, people can dissect this however they want. I don't know that people look at Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts and their first thought anymore is, oh, that's a black quarterback. I think that guys like Patrick Mahomes, because of the foundation that was laid by the Doug Williams and the Randall Cunninghams and the Donovan McNabbs of the world, are now able to just be an elite quarterback in the league in a way that previous generations didn't have the opportunity to. And I loved what Patrick Mahomes had to say about him being aware that the next kid out there, I mean, I know when I'm playing with my kid out, when we're passing the football around out in the field across the street from my house, like I'll make a ridiculous throw, like running, or something. And I'll yell, Patty Mahomes, as I let it go, and he's very aware that there are kids today that emulate him, just like he did. Right. And that, that he's a torchbearer for that. Look at the fact that it took 57 years of Super Bowls before we had a matchup like this, shouldn't be lost because it's a significant moment culturally, in addition, so congrats to Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes for making history no matter what happens on Sunday. But you had touched on something about Steve Spagnuolo, and he's got 3 Super Bowls to his title. Of course, one of them was dethroning the 17-0 Patriots, right? Like, I mean, they were 18-0 Patriots when they were trying to join the Miami Dolphins as the only team to go undefeated through an entire NFL season. And Steve Spagnuolo cooked up a game plan and beat him. And I just wanted, what is your thought on the idea of playoff spags? Because when I look back at the AFC Championship game, like I said off the top, I felt like that was a coin flip game, right? And I know there's a lot of other people. I talked to Ben Baby with ESPN, who I knew from our days on the SEC beat together. He was convinced that Cincinnati was going to run the Chiefs defense in the AFC Championship game, and it didn't happen. And a lot of that, I think, has to do with the fact that Chris Jones is a game wrecker, but it also had a lot to do with a really smart scheme that Steve Spagnuolo put in place that caused Joe Burrow to hesitate, that confused Joe Burrow and left him a little befuddled in that game. And then when they were able to get some pressure on him, Burrow had just frankly a terrible game there. Is there something to playoff spags? And who's your money on, playoff spags or Jalen Hurts, who's a still young quarterback who's never been on a stage like this in his career, going against the wily old vet defensive coordinator who obviously has been and has shown what he can do in this moment before?
My thing is Steve Spagnuolo was able to do it twice with the Giants against Brady. So, right. I mean, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Jalen Hurts, but he just doesn't have that same cachet yet as Tom Brady did walking into both of those Super Bowls.
I don't think it's disrespectful to say Jalen Hurts still has more work to do before he stacks his resume against Tom Brady's.
Right, but I know people want to take everything a certain way as disrespect every time, but when sometimes it's just the reality. And that doesn't mean Jalen Hurts can't be a good quarterback. That means he's not going to be a great quarterback. It just means he hasn't been through enough Super Bowl experiences, enough media days, enough of those NFC conference championship games and those high stake moments. This is his first run at that, truly at that, versus Mahomes, that's all Mahomes knows in postseason NFL history for himself. And Steve Spagnuolo has been on those mountaintops. This is going to be time number 4 at this point. So look, Steve Spagnuolo, I mean, I think he wants to have a certain legacy too as well. And this is another one of those legacy games where Steve Spagnuolo can put his stamp on something yet again and be able to do it against a former franchise of his.
Yeah, no, I mean, he'll have an interesting case. I mean, there aren't a lot of assistant coaches that get into the Hall of Fame, but he'll have an interesting case if he's got 4 Super Bowls on his ledger. Especially if you drill down, into who he did it against, the time, the place, the circumstance, that kind of thing. And playoff Frank is a real thing too. He's shown up in these playoffs these last couple of games. So let's start there with this defense, since we're already talking about Spagnuolo and guys like that. The defensive line played out of their minds, but we all know that Bengals offensive line was beat up. When you look at this Eagles offensive line, is it as good as any offensive line the Chiefs have faced so far this year?
I'm not. I'll definitely put it in the top 3. I don't definitively know where it is or isn't at, because so much of what that scheme is about is based off that read option, and that causes a lot of hesitation for a lot of defenses and creates a lot of doubt. I'm not going to say that they're not athletic and that what they have collectively isn't a really good offensive line. So I'll definitely say 100% for sure they're in the top 3, and they're a better offensive line than Kansas City is all across, the five positions. But, I don't know, man. I don't know definitively what it will or won't be. It's a matter of how Steve Spagnuolo can get after him.
So one of the things we talked about was let's start with the read option, because I think the one thing that the Chiefs do have going for them is they've got a middle linebacker who is very, very good at reading his keys and dissecting plays and making plays. Do you think this is a good matchup for Nick Bolton? And you may have to go back to his Mizzou tape to see him facing offenses like this, but that was what he was great at Mizzou, was being able to diagnose plays and fire downhill, against college run schemes, things like that. Do you think this matchup sets up well for a guy like Nick Bolton against the run?
I think the key more so is going to be the defensive ends. What does Frank Clark do? What does Mike Dana do? What does Carlos Dunlap do? What does George Karlaftis do? What do they make them? How do they make them attack? How do they make the linebackers attack from a scheme perspective? Because, Hurts Hurts is reading off the ends on each side on every play. But the Eagles throw in so many wrinkles with it to where even if you're seeing the keys that you are, sometimes they're doing them to throw you off because they're actually going the opposite way. And what I mean by that is they have multiple counter runs out of one of it. And then they have a quarterback draw out of that counter that Jalen ends up keeping instead of running the counter. You'll see the backside guard and tackle pull, and they may pull, but then, they throw a little okie doke in there, and the linebacker like Bolton or somebody else would be flowing, and they're in the wrong spot because Hurts ended up keeping it off that counter, and that actually ends up, maybe being his play. And there's times where you'll see a tight end or the running back go in motion, and you think they're going to do the read option, and the running back's the lead blocker for Hurts around the corner. So, I mean, there's so many variations that are run, and for people that are kind of wondering what they're like, they're like from a run perspective, they're a much faster version of the Baltimore Ravens scheme for what people have seen. The running backs are lightning quick, and that's what makes that scheme go. Between Hurts' athletic ability and his quickness combined with what the running backs are, that's what makes so much of their offense go. And then they play action out of that, where they may throw it down the seam, or Hurts may look like he's going to run, and then he does a jump pass to Goddard, or when he sees single high, he wants to chuck it down the field to A.J. Brown or to Devontae Smith. And, there's variations of what they do, and it just all kind of blends and flows together, but all of it revolves around the read option being able to work.
Yeah, and that's why you're going to have to, it's going to be one of those games where I'm not sure that pressure on the quarterback and sacks is the way to measure this game, because we've seen games like this before, right? Where discipline in your rush lanes, not giving up, openings in the middle where Jalen Hurts can take advantage of his legs, setting a strong edge like you talked about with the ends, may be more important than actually like getting Jalen Hurts on the ground in this game. I mean, obviously against a guy like Joe Burrow, you want to hit him. You want to hit him early. You want to hit him often. You want to get him on the ground as much as you can. And if you can do that with Jalen Hurts, sure, but you can't let him. You got to try to keep him stuck up in that pocket as much as you can, because I don't think Jalen Hurts is going to do as much damage from the pocket as he's going to do if you let him get outside with his legs. And this brings me to the other point, the second kind of underplayed storyline. People keep talking about Mahomes' ankle, after seeing what he did in the AFC Championship game and knowing that he had an extra week of rest coming into this one. I'm not super concerned about Patrick Mahomes' health. Have we seen Jalen Hurts really test that injured shoulder since he came back? Is that maybe more of a sneaky issue, the Jalen Hurts shoulder, than the Patrick Mahomes ankle, even though one's gotten more attention than the other?
Now, Todd, when I tweet stuff out, I don't tweet it by accident. People seem to think that whenever I tweet some stuff out that I'm just flying blind around here, clueless about it, and I just happen to randomly stumble upon something. There may be times I'm putting stuff out there to kind of get people to start thinking about it before they end up seeing what may end up happening on one of those Sunday games. So when I
just so you know, you can follow him at Jacob71 on Twitter.
I think most of the people listening already do. but that's very kind of you. No, but like I showed his passing charts for a reason. And I've gotten a lot of pushback from Eagles fans on Twitter, which I knew I would, that are like, well, they're so dominant in the run, they didn't have to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, no, you're right, they were. But there was a reason they needed to be, because that shoulder, I'm telling you, the completion percentage has gone down in the throws that he does make, and throwing past 15 yards right now, it's not working out well. So, I mean, and it wouldn't stun me if at the end of the year we hear more about what his shoulder injury actually is, and that it's not as healed up as people think that it is. So I'll be curious to see how the Chiefs want to test that. And that's what I'm saying. Stopping that read option takes so much wind out of their sail that they're going to have to pivot, and they may have to lean on Jalen Hurts a little bit more. And he's a little bit more erratic as a passer now, and he hasn't been able to push the football down the field the same way that he could when he's tried in the games since that injury. And I'm just saying, because I've watched most of the Eagles season now, and I've seen Jalen Hurts with a healthy shoulder versus a hurt shoulder, and they're different people. And like that, and his hurt shoulder is just not, I don't think it's just going to get better with time. I think that's something that going to be dealt with in the offseason, unfortunately. So we'll see how that shakes out. But yeah, so go ahead.
Well, no, so I was going to ask, I mean, this is a team, I don't know that their weapons are as good, certainly don't get as much hype as the Cincinnati Bengals, right? But A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, at tight end there, that's a handful.
Yeah.
Especially when you've got to contend with the run. We've seen, the Chiefs are comfortable leaving their rookie secondary players like to fend for themselves here. Jalen Watson and Brian Cook, there were times they were like, you've got Jamar Chase, have fun, kids.
Mm-hmm.
Trent McDuffie's been left on an island. Joshua Williams has had to soak up some big minutes or big reps especially when Snead went down with the concussion, in that AFC Championship game. How do you see them deploying the guys? I mean, obviously McDuffie is going to take one guy on the outside. Do you think they'll try to put Snead out, or do you think they'll try to rotate Snead and Justin Reid through at the slot to try to handle Goddard, and then leave Watson and Williams and maybe Thornhill to that side, on Devontae Smith? Just what do you see them trying to do to combat those three guys? Because obviously they're going to have to devote a lot to the run. So those guys are going to, they're going to have to man up and play some, or man up or match up without a whole lot of help, I think.
Well, and I think another part of it is they're going to have the corners give some looks that they may be blitzing on some of those plays to give that illusion to make the Eagles kind of think a little bit before they, and maybe they check to some hot routes and maybe somebody jumps those routes and is ready to pick it and create some turnovers. I think the big key for the Chiefs is trying to create some turnovers off some of the looks they're going to give that may look like pressure and Hurts wants to get the ball out quick and a little erratic, and then they can pick it and take off with it and get Mahomes and the Chiefs offense more possessions. So like, I think that's a big aspect to it that's gonna may or may not be talked about. I don't know. I haven't really kept up on national media the past couple of days to check what they're saying, but that's a piece of the puzzle. And they're going to need probably somebody like Justin Reid or maybe L'Jarius Sneed at times, or maybe Trent McDuffie, whoever, to kind of help in the open field to kind of contain on some of those read option aspects as well. So, and some of the screen passes that they try to sneak out with Dallas Goedert, or some of those wide receiver screens they try to sneak out as well, like the Bengals do, that the Eagles try to run when they see certain looks. So I think the Chiefs are going to manipulate looks and stuff that they want to get them. And it wouldn't surprise me a couple times if either it's Brian Cook or Juan Thornhill or whoever is showing single high to try to get a matchup to try to force something a certain way. And then they rotate right after the snap and, oh, hey, it's too deep now. And you chucked it up to A.J. Brown and somebody's sprinting their rear off to go make a pick or make a deflection.
There's Juan Thornhill.
So, like, that stuff would not stun me one bit. And I'm not going to be surprised if I see more zone, just because they need to kind of be ready for run and some of those slant routes and making sure that they don't give up the middle of the field.
Right. That's why I kind of said, instead of man up, like matchup maybe, but here's another thing that I've just kind of been curious about. Is there any value to the fact that Creed Humphrey was once the center for Jalen Hurts at Oklahoma? I mean, because, the center is kind of, the heart and soul of that line. He's going to know what Jalen Hurts likes. He's going to know what Jalen Hurts doesn't like, what makes him uncomfortable, I mean, do you think Spagnuolo and those guys had a conversation with Creed at some point for any intel and any insight? Or do you think everything they need to know they can just get from film?
I think if they didn't have a heart-to-heart with Creed about what Jalen likes protection-wise, what if there's certain tendencies he has based on read option, or if it's snapped this way or that way, what's he like or what's he get frustrated about? When he sees this thing, what does he normally like to do? Yeah, no, after the AFC Championship game, if they didn't have those conversations and ask those questions, then yeah, that's a very big missed opportunity to talk to one of the guys that would have helped Jalen Hurts during their time together.
Yeah, I just feel like the quarterback center relationship is a pretty special one. And for Jalen Hurts to do what he did after transferring to Oklahoma, I feel like he had to have a pretty good relationship with Creed to make that all work. So.
And I feel like Tod Palmer just uncovered a hidden gem that's probably not being talked about by a lot of people, because they'd have to associate all that together, the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, but Todd did.
All right, hey, let's look to the other side. Look, Patrick Mahomes, he's going to do Patrick Mahomes things he does every week, right? But when you look at this defensive line and particularly the depth of it, man, with Javon Hargrave and Fletcher Cox in the middle, and Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat and Robert Quinn, and I mean, they've got a lot of depth. They signed Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph as things went along. There's a lot of talent, a lot of depth in there. Is that you mentioned that being one of your 3 focal points? Like, just dissect that matchup for me and maybe what worries you or what you think the Chiefs need to do to have success against that front.
Yeah. So the number one worry is Reddick. Reddick's got lightning speed around that corner, and he's going to give Andrew Wiley fits. Wiley will do the best he can, but Reddick can get back there in 3 to 4 seconds without much of a problem. And it doesn't matter how well you're blocking it. He's just that fast. He's got that level of acceleration. And so if I didn't see a lot of like TE stunts or, things of that nature with him when I was watching. They normally try to kind of keep him more, just let him get upfield and not let him get caught in the wash type of thing and take advantage of his acceleration around the end. Josh Sweat and Hargrave, they actually run a lot more of the TE stunts, a lot of the twists, that type of stuff, just because Hargrave's got insane speed for a defensive tackle that he shouldn't be able to have. Like, it's up there with Chris Jones level, how quickly he can get around and he can accelerate downhill and cause problems. And Sweat's good against around the edge as well. And with that matchup with Orlando Brown Orlando cannot get his shoulders turned inside, or it's going to be a problem. If they're turned towards the center, things aren't good because somebody's coming around that corner and going to cause Pat some problems. So like that's another aspect of it. And then, yeah, it's just like those three are kind of what make that defense go. I know there's other names like you said with Brandon Graham and Sue and Fletcher Cox and those guys. But it revolves around the speed of those three guys and people rotating in to help give them breaks to maintain that speed. But those are the three, and they're going to have to chip like they did against the Bengals. Orlando, I'm curious to see how much help they're going to give him, if they give him as much as they did with the Bengals, or if they're just going to try to get the ball out quick a ton, or, how they're going to help Wiley as well, because there's going to be problems off the edge, and Mahomes is going to need as close to a healthy ankle as possible to evade some of that, because the other part of it is the Eagles get really undisciplined when it's fire drill time and it's out of structure and the play falls apart. Like, dude, they lose their zones so quickly, man. And like there was one play against the Chicago Bears, Byron Pringle's just waving near the pylon to Fields, and he threw a touchdown to him wide open because Slay lost him in coverage, and so did the safety, and he's just wide open. Nobody within a 15-yard radius because Fields took off and was threatening to run, and then they all started coming up. I will say this about the Eagles: their back seven is really undisciplined, and like that's the saving grace with them. And I will say one more thing about it. For people that don't know, Vic Fangio is one of the he's like a senior defensive assistant consultant type. It's Vic Fangio's defense there. He may not be the quote unquote defensive coordinator, but I can tell you whenever Jonathan Gannon kind of moves on, whenever Fangio moves on to the Dolphins and Jonathan Gannon's left on his own again, you may see things go back to what they were before the year before, because Fangio's not kind of supervising stuff in that way. And you could kind of see it. So I think there's going to be some stuff the Chiefs are going to run that they ran against the Broncos in the previous years while Fangio was there. And I think they're going to take advantage of that, especially with this thing called the trips formation.
Yeah. Well, that was the other thing I was going to ask is, the Eagles, you talked about Reddick and how important he is to their pass rush and what they do. They like to rush five. Historically, though, Patrick Mahomes does pretty well if you're going to send an extra guy at him. So do the Eagles have to adjust it all with what they want to do and the way they want to play going up against Mahomes? Because the teams that you think about the teams that have had success, the ones where they've beat up Kelce at the line and, rushed 3 and dropped 8 into coverage, are the teams that historically have given Patrick Mahomes fits. And he worked hard this offseason and was better against those kind of coverages this year and stuff like that. But historically, blitzing Patrick Mahomes doesn't work well for the opposing defense.
Well, with Vic Fangio, it's kind of a mixed bag in terms of zone blitzes and keeping zones and things of that nature. I think if Fangio has more of a say in it, I think they'll be a little bit more cautious and kind of see how he does, how his ankle does, and then go from there. But, they may surprise us all and hey, we're bringing good luck to you. Yeah.
Well, like I said, I think I kind of hope they do. Because I think Pat'll have a big day if they want to try to do something like that. Did we cover all your 3 focal points?
I hope so. I don't really know anymore, man. I'm just going to be honest.
Anything else you want to talk about? Look, you mentioned the back seven, guys like Darius Slay, CJ Gardner-Johnson, James Bradbury, who they got from the Giants and stuff like that. There's some name guys there, but I think that obviously McCole Hardman Jr. is going to be out. I think if Kadarius Toney can bring that speed element, like we've talked about down the stretch of the season, stuff like that. If Kadarius Toney can, and I think he's going to give it a go one way or the other. He said as much. And, the Jarius Sneed said he's out of the concussion protocol, stuff like that. As long as Toney can go, I think they're okay. But I think they've got to have Juju out there, Juju Smith-Schuster out there too. Like they've got to be back to relatively full strength. I think it's going to be a lot to ask if you've got Justin Watson, Marcus Kemp, and Marquez Valdez-Scantling trying to win a Super Bowl for you.
Yeah, I mean that would not be an easy task. It's not bashing them in any way. It's just with that Eagles front, like they would have to all step up really big. And
Sky Moore, I guess throw Sky Moore in there,
right? But no, I think everybody that can play is going to. The Clyde Edwards-Helaire addition to the 53 with McCole Hardman being put on IR. I kind of wonder if there's certain ways they want to use Clyde in the passing offense, maybe in the flats, maybe screens, maybe he motions out as a fifth receiver, something of that nature. I'm kind of curious if they'll keep him active on that day. Will they keep all four tight ends active? I'm intrigued to see by that. Because the other thing that we haven't even talked about, Eagles aren't that great against the run. Like they're not the barn burners against the run that you would think that they would be. So I mean, there's some opportunities, especially on the edges, to really move them and be able to have Pacheco run some people over and be able to control the tempo of that game.
Well, and you think back to Super Bowl 54 when the Chiefs won, and everybody remembers Jet Chip Wasp, and everybody remembers Patrick Mahomes, his touchdown run and the scream he let out. But there was a strong case in that game that that Mahomes was not, in fact, the MVP of that game. I think that Pacheco or McKinnon could be in line for a big game. In this one, just because of like what you said, I think they can run. I don't think Andy's going to surprise us with a run heavy game, even though, we've talked about how the Chiefs might benefit from that on occasion. I don't think it's happening, but I think that Pacheco could be in for a big game. He could be in for a really big game. That Damian Williams type level impact, I think.
Certainly possible. I'm not going to discount anything that could happen. I know that sounds like, oh, come on, you got to commit something. I'm just telling you, man, anything's possible. Like there's so many different directions things can go. And without me being involved in being able to witness the game planning going on and being able to watch everything in practice. Like,
Andy hasn't done a Zoom with you this week?
No, that is escaped his calendar, the schedule on his calendar. That
he must have lost the invite.
It happens, dude. It'll be all right, man. I'm not too worried. But I will say, in my final thought here, the Eagles defense is really aggressive. They want to beat you to the corner. They want to get there, and they want to beat you first. So there's a lot of stuff you can do misdirection-wise against them. There's a lot of stuff you can do out of the trips formation to cause them problems and make them blow coverages. And so bootlegs are good against them. Reverses are potentially there. There's a lot. If you hit the delayed screen passes right, there's opportunities there. So, I mean, there's stuff that the Chiefs can do to slow down the rush and be able to be effective and be able to put up, 30 points without a problem. So I want people to know that it can happen. It's just a lot of circumstances and factors going together and a lot of possessions for that Chiefs offense to really kind of hit their stride.
Yeah. Look, if I'm a Chiefs fan, I love hearing that because Andy Reid against an aggressive defense with his ability to scheme things up and scheme the matchups up that he wants and manipulate the defense, like you said, whether it's with the formations, running trips, or whether it's some of the motions he does and the jet sweeps and different things that they run off of it, and just the creativity and the variety that he brings together. You talk about the Eagles option game and the creativity there. I like Andy Reid's chances against an aggressive defense.
I'm just saying all of it.
I would rather face an aggressive defense than a highly disciplined defense. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, I think if you're comparing the 49ers with how disciplined they were when the Chiefs went against them in the previous Super Bowl versus the aggressive versus the discipline of the Eagles, it's very different defenses.
Yeah.
And Patrick Mahomes is going to be the best quarterback the Eagles have gone up against all year, regular season or postseason.
Well, and Arian Foster was kind enough to already leak the script, so it sounds like the Eagles are going to win 37-34. But I mean, that'll be an entertaining game.
I have no idea what you're talking about, and I don't want to explore it at this time of the evening. So I'll just trust you on that one. It's like that. It's like that little meme that goes around. I'm not going to read all that. I'm sorry for whatever happened, or congratulations.
Well, just know that a man who could win a fight with a wolf has already told us what's going to happen in the Super Bowl. So,
was that on pay-per-view, or how'd that go about? Fighting a wolf?
Yeah, I don't know. Arian Foster's good for a headliner too.
Nah. Well, Todd, I feel like this is my exit.
That's how you're taking the exit ramp. Okay. Well, all right.
Oh, hey, look.
I guess maybe we'll have a little bit of a. Maybe we'll have a little bit of.
It's a Waffle House on this exit.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Good luck. Don't get caught crying in the bathroom. Maybe you'll see Trevor Lawrence there. And hey, 4th and 1 fans, be on the lookout for maybe a bonus podcast later in the week with some cool content that Nick's come up. And until then, take care, kids.